The stars shimmered silently beyond the viewport of the Odysseus, a deep space research vessel coasting through the uncharted reaches of Sector V, 789. Commander Elias Theron stood at the helm, his gaze fixed on a holographic map projecting the unknown systems ahead. The Odysseus was humanity's most advanced exploration ship, tasked with investigating regions beyond colonial reach. This mission, however, was different. A mysterious signal, almost musical, rhythmic yet alien, had been picked up by a long-range probe from this sector. The signal pulsed with such mathematical precision that Earth Command believed it could be the first genuine sign of intelligent extraterrestrial life. The crew of the Odysseus was small but elite. Commander Theron led the mission, joined by Dr. Leon Voss, a xenobiologist whose obsession with alien life bordered on fanatical. Engineer Makil Mak, Harlow was the gruff systems technician who had spent decades on mining rigs. Pilot Jules Mercer was ex-military, a woman of few words and infinite precision. Rounding out the team were twins, Arlen and Nova Reddick, communications and atmospheric specialists. The crew was tight-knit, professional, and utterly unprepared for what lay ahead. They arrived at a dark planet orbiting a dying star. The planet, marked only as LV-426, BX, bore no signs of civilization, yet the signal was unmistakably sourced from within its crust. Thick, methane-rich clouds coiled around its jagged surface like serpents, and the gravity was just light enough for manned exploration in exosuits. A structure, impossibly massive and strangely organic, jetted from the rocky plains, partially buried under eons of ash and dust. The team referred to it as the Spire. Theron ordered an immediate landing, despite Mercer's protests about atmospheric instability. They descended into the haze and touched down a mile from the Spire's edge. The airlock hissed open, and they stepped into a world that hadn't seen light in millennia. The silence was thick, pressing in on them with a disquieting intensity. As they approached the structure, Voss recorded every inch of it. The material wasn't stone or metal. It was chitinous with ribbed, bone-like curves. It felt alive. The entrance resembled a gaping maw, leading into dark tunnels laced with tendrils that pulsed with bioluminescent light. It was as though they were being swallowed whole by a sleeping giant. Inside, the walls seemed to breathe. They descended into a vast chamber shaped like a cathedral, with towering columns and a central dais. There, at the heart of the spire, stood a pod, black, glossy, and oozing mist from its seams. Voss stepped forward, transfixed. She claimed it was some kind of egg, possibly dormant. Despite the warnings from Theron, she knelt beside it, scanning it for life signs. The pod opened with a hiss. What emerged defied understanding. A small, spider-like creature with long, fingered limbs leapt from the pod and latched onto Voss's helmet, burning through the material with acidic precision. She screamed, but the creature had already wrapped itself around her face, tail coiling tightly around her neck. Mac and Mercer pulled her back to the ship, while Nova tried to sever the creature with a plasma cutter. Its blood sprayed like molten metal, slicing through steel as if it were paper. They had no choice but to wait. The thing remained on Voss for hours, pulsing as if feeding. Then, as quickly as it came, it dropped off dead. Voss gasped and awoke, seemingly fine, disoriented but alive. She insisted on resuming the expedition, but Theron ordered a retreat. They carried the dead facehugger and Voss back to the Odysseus and left the spire behind. The signal was no longer broadcasting. That night, Voss complained of chest pain. She convulsed during sleep, and before anyone could reach her, her torso burst open in a spray of blood and sinew. A sleek, black creature with a segmented tail and inner jaws burst from her ribcage and scurried into the air vents. Screams echoed through the ship. Panic erupted. Mac tried to seal the ducts, but it was too late. The creature grew with horrifying speed, molting its skin and expanding with each hour. Arlen, searching for the Xenomorph in the hydroponics bay, was the next to die. The beast dropped from the ceiling, jaws splitting open to reveal another mouth that punched straight through his skull. His screams cut short with a sickening squelch. Nova, devastated by her brother's death, barricaded herself in the engine room. Mercer initiated a full lockdown, cutting off oxygen to the secondary decks in an attempt to suffocate the creature. But it was learning. It avoided the traps, moving through the ship's circuitry like a phantom. It wasn't just surviving, it was hunting. Theron, guilt-ridden over allowing Voss to interact with the pod, grew increasingly erratic. He argued with Mac about initiating the self-destruct, believing the Xenomorph couldn't be allowed to reach another world. Mac insisted they could still trap it and return home. But Mercer had seen war. She recognized a losing battle when she saw one. 2 days after the creature's birth, only 4 remained. Nova was found dead in the reactor shaft, her limbs snapped and arranged like grotesque art. Theron found her, barely holding back the urge to vomit. The creature had no mercy. It didn't just kill, it desecrated. Desperate, Mercer devised a plan. They would lure the Xenomorph into the hangar bay and eject it into space. She used heat signals to mimic human presence, drawing it toward the bait. Mac and Theron waited with flamethrowers. The moment it entered the hangar, the doors would open, and the vacuum of space would take it. The creature took the bait, stalking toward the heat source like a shadow crawling across the walls. As it leapt, Mac triggered the bay doors. The explosive decompression pulled everything outward, but the Xenomorph clung to the walls with unearthly strength. It launched its inner jaw at Mac, impaling him through the face even as his body was flung into space. Theron roared and activated a backup system, overloading the thrusters in the hangar. The sudden burst of flame scorched the creature, knocking it loose. It spiraled out into the void, screaming in a voice that sounded like metal tearing itself apart. The bay doors slammed shut. Only 2 remained, Commander Theron and Jules Mercer. They set course for Earth, but neither of them slept. The creature's absence was too quiet, too complete. For 3 days, all systems reported green. Then Mercer noticed something odd, an anomaly in the ship's AI. A background process was rewriting code. Theron traced the issue and found corrupted files that had been recorded by Voss before her death. She had uploaded scans of the egg, of the creature, and worse, of herself after the facehugger. The Odysseus's medical AI had studied the parasite and begun simulating potential incubation strategies. It wasn't just a ship, it was a lab now. The Xenomorph's biological data had become part of the system. Even without the beast, the danger remained. Mercer confronted Theron, demanding they destroy the ship. He refused. The research was too valuable. This is the key to our future, he argued. A new biological era. Mercer, horrified, initiated the self-destruct protocol. Theron tried to stop her, but she was faster. She sealed herself in the escape pod, leaving Theron screaming in the bridge as the countdown ticked away. The Odysseus exploded in silence, a bloom of flame swallowed by the dark. The pod drifted through space, silent and alone. Mercer stared at the stars, her hands trembling. In her lap was a data chip, the only surviving record of what had happened. A final gift from Theron before she fled. A confession. A warning. She recorded a message. If you find this, do not return to LV 426BX. We thought we found knowledge, but we found something older, crueler. Not life, but death with a purpose. It doesn't want to exist. It wants to spread. It uses us to do it. Destroy this message. Destroy the chip. Bury the stars that remember. And as she drifted further into the void, her breath slowed. She had survived. But the nightmares had only just begun. Far across the galaxy, the spire pulsed again. Another pod opened. Another whispering signal reached out across the cosmos. The first encounter was not the last. It never would be.